And welcome back to Contemporary Black Voices, where today's topic is really called Passing Failing Students. So, Caleb, you had a question that you wanted to pose to Mr. Macias.
Yeah, so before the break, I was asking Dr. Macias about the kids who were passed in, from middle school, who are deficient in their reading and math skills. And so once they get to high school, you now have the high school English teacher, or reading teacher, and math teacher, who now, in addition to having to teach the students who are at grade level, having to catch up the middle school students who are below grade level. And so now it's like the onus is on those teachers to catch those students up. And so I just want to see if you could speak a little bit about that.
Absolutely. The intent is to identify a student that may be behind in sixth grade. And so naturally they would get intervention in seventh, they would get intervention in eighth to be caught up. But the realities are that students come into middle schools and even high schools from other districts who, there's differences there. So that reality has been pretty consistent in terms of how our teachers have had to address them. And there are other factors that we have tutoring in high school. We do a lot of other things in high school to ensure a student is up to speed. One of the things I'll tell you too that's very strong is athletics or extracurricular, where students need to be passing in order to participate. So I won't say there's more motivation, but students are motivated to say we need to be up on level. But the issue of what you mentioned is interesting, because in my time on the board, which this is my 14th year as a board member, I would, in the early times, hear elementary teachers say that they're doing well to educate a student, but they get to middle school and they get lost. And then I hear from high schoolers, well, we get to middle schooler and they're behind. So it felt even 10 years ago like we were just passing students. But that's not the expectation of our district and of the board and of our administration. We need to get student support. Now, my concern would be is if we've had a student identified as early as sixth grade and we were not able to get them up to speed by eighth grade going into ninth, there is something that's lacking that needs to be addressed.
Excuse me.
And so as a board and as an administration, it's our responsibility to identify how effective programs are. And I'm a big advocate for return on investment. Since resources are limited, we need to make sure we're intelligent about how they're being applied. And I'm quick to yank or pull or evaluate, along with our administration, a program that is not delivering. The goal is to send students into high school prepared, because if they're behind, there could be lost opportunities for them to pursue other pathways in high school.
One of the things I want to mention is you were talking about the kids who are coming into the district who are already behind. Now, it's a large chunk of those students who may be coming in from charter schools who exit those kids who are not passing. They get them out of the schools so they can focus more on their college prep type programs. So you've got your own students who were homegrown in the district, and now you're dealing with students who are coming in from other areas who did not have the interventions in place to help the students. So my heart goes out to these teachers, to where you're dealing with your own, and you've got these other kids coming in who are just lost, and you're trying to figure out how to get them up to par.
We are the default, right? We are the core education factor. And I know this isn't a show about vouchers, but vouchers are really going to be detrimental to the education system if they are passed. But one other wrinkle too to note, earlier in the segment, you talked about how a percentage of folks don't know where we're going in education. And a lot of that has to do with marketing. And when you have entities like the governor saying that education is failing, it's given the perception that education is failing. But it's always interesting to me that when it's a governor's year to run, education is phenomenal, and he's to be able to take the stage. We're doing great with education. It's because they're changing the bar, and they're lowering it at a time to so it look better. But the reality is, I try not to pay attention to the politics. We have a job to do, and we need to create a college and career-ready student base. And at Judson, 83% of our students are Black and brown, but you're talking a significant generation of minority children that need to be ready. And I take that very seriously. Judson's African American population is around 30%. That is significant. And again, we cannot fail these students.
Let me ask you a question, and this is based on a similar to me theory. What is the percentage of white teachers in relation to your minority population students? Is it mostly white teachers? You know, or is it a strong mixture of diversity? And the reason I'm asking the question is there's been a lot of research out there indicating that when a student is in a classroom or down the hall where they can see somebody that look like him, her, they, them, or whatever, that they tend to do better. So are we hiring enough diverse teachers to where it can be a factor to help these students become more motivated to do better?
I can tell you we're a very diverse district. I think that's what makes our district strong. I know that our efforts to retain staff that look like our students is at high levels, and real proud of the fact that our administration reflects, and not a lot of them do, our student makeup. So I think from that aspect, we are doing what is necessary to find the right talent in those areas. But I'll tell you, the struggles that students are having are more economic based. I mean, they're based in poverty, and it doesn't matter what color you are at that point. The poverty is the variable that's really sometimes holding students back from succeeding.
Let me give you a opportunity to give a advertisement for public school. Do you know of any statistics of what happens or what kind of student is better prepared when they're going to secondary education? Is it the charter school or is it the public school?
Well, and you'll probably be surprised at my answer. My answer is that schools need to meet the need of the students. And let's be real, public schools can't be 15-1 or 12-1, and we can't. We are educating the masses. Sometimes students thrive in smaller classrooms. That's just the truth of the matter. So for my colleagues and friends who have been very adversarial with charters, I always tell them to take a step back, because there's nothing we can do with charters. They're here, but we can be better than them. So by identifying where our core strengths are, by identifying them and then working to provide the services our parents and our students need, we can win the game. Because I can tell you, charters want to be ISDs. They're not going to be. That's the other thing, right? They're never going to have the bandwidth that we have or the resources that we have. So in order to support students, we need to be utilizing our resources in the best way. And then obviously we are, in my opinion, a better choice. But I also recognize that because there is school choice, we're not the only choice. And I think competition does make people stronger.
Mr. Macias,
I'm sorry, Chris. So I have two questions for you. So one of the questions is, you talked about interventions. So before I lose my train of thought on that. So the interventions that you have in place once they reach 7th and 8th grade. So did you want to alleviate the concerns of those parents who saw that article and are out there thinking, oh my God, we're passing kids who are not prepared? You talked about the interventions that you have in place to catch those students up in 7th and 8th grade. So I want to give you the opportunity to talk about those interventions. And then probably when we come back, my second question is, you mentioned the poverty and how that affects the education of those kids. So I definitely want to touch on that.
Well, in a quick response, remember, if a student is deficient in both math and reading, they're not being promoted. If they don't have a 70 average across all the courses, they're not getting promoted. We're going to identify those students that they have to repeat because there's some other areas that they need support in. If they're deficient in math and say they have a 65 average, our interventions need to come in and get that student up to where they're proficient in that core subject area. That's the plan. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have an opportunity to look at how expansive that intervention can be. And so during the months of May and June, I assure you, we will be evaluating what those need to look like, because we're in the middle of budgets. And we're going to pass a budget initiative that's going to be focused on those enhanced intervention.
And with that being said, we're going to come right back to continue this discussion because I do have a question for you.